Tonight, President Trump starts his first week in the Oval Office.
So help me God.
He's already making moves and keeping his promises.
Good.
Hannity will take you inside the Trump White House. We've got exclusive access. We'll interview Kellyanne Conway from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Plus,
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House. I'm a nasty woman.
celebrity snowflakes have a collective meltdown this weekend over President Trump. Laura Ingraham will weigh in on all this liberal lunacy. All of that plus Senator Mike Lee. Join us. Hannity starts from Washington right here, right now. Welcome to Hannity, and tonight we are coming to you from Washington, D.C., where we have been given exclusive access inside President Donald Trump's White House, and we'll have my interview with counsel to the president, Kellyanne Conway. That's coming up in just a few minutes. But first, it is only day 4 of the Trump administration, and the commander-in-chief is already, well, he's launching a shock and awe campaign against the Washington, D.C. establishment, and that is tonight's opening monologue. So President Trump, well, he's not wasting any time enacting his agenda, and as he promised on the campaign trail and said in his inaugural address, the days of all talk and no action are over. Now, just hours after the swearing in on Friday, as the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump immediately took action to undo the damage left behind by President Barack Obama. He signed an executive order that can go a long way in dismantling this disastrous health care law known as Obamacare. And President Trump also took action to freeze all new and pending federal government regulations on day 2. President Trump, he spoke with the leaders of Canada and Mexico in what is likely the opening talks to begin to renegotiate the issue of NAFTA. The administration also announced that the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, will visit the White House this Friday. And President Trump, well, he visited the CIA, where he promised to unleash the capabilities of the agency to defeat radical Islamic terror, which, by the way, is a phrase this administration is not afraid to use to describe our real enemies. And today, on what President Trump described as his first real day in office, well, he's been very productive, starting with a meeting with business leaders where he promised to drastically cut tax rates and take an axe to business regulations. Watch this.
What we're doing is we are going to be cutting taxes massively for both the middle class and for companies, and that's massively. We're trying to get it down to anywhere from 15 to 20%. We think we can cut regulations by 75%, maybe more, but by 75%.
Wow, 75% or more. Now, President Trump, he didn't end there. He also sat down with labor union leaders to focus on bringing jobs back to American shores. Now, he also signed 3 executive orders, including one that begins the process of withdrawing from the TPP trade agreement, another that places a hiring freeze on all non-military federal workers, and he used his pen to ban federal funding for foreign non-government organizations that use the money to either promote or pay for abortions. Now, President Trump, he finished his very busy day by meeting with the House Speaker, Paul Ryan, where it's reported that they discussed repealing and replacing Obamacare. So make no mistake about it, President Trump is doing exactly what he said he would do. That's refreshing. Earlier today, I sat down with the counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, to ask her about this agenda and the future and more. Take a look. And joining us now, counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Well, by the way, the first woman to ever win a presidential campaign as campaign manager. Little different environment.
It is, but same Donald Trump. I mean, a man of action, high energy, high impact. First full day on the job in the White House as President Trump, Sean, and it's just remarkable what got done on the first day. Right in this room, the Roosevelt Room, earlier in the day at breakfast, President Trump and Vice President Pence, they hosted the major CEOs of companies that are in manufacturing and, of course, are great job creators. So these men and women came here to really talk about how to unleash American manufacturing, how to create more jobs, and do that without the yoke of regulation and taxation to which they've become accustomed. It was such a productive conversation, and I think they all learned from each other. They went into the Oval Office after that, chatted more, took some pictures. Which, by the way, is
like 4 feet from here.
Very close to here, steps away. And President Trump asked them, how many of you have been in the Oval Office before? And a few hands went up. Hours later, in the same room, President Trump hosted labor union leaders, the trades guys and gals, and some of the workers. And it was just a remarkable exchange on the day when President Trump made good on his promise to withdraw from TPP and to look at trade deals through the lens of the American worker and what's fair to us as a country, not always giving away the whole store to someone else. And he will negotiate bilateral deals in the future, but they have to benefit the American worker and they have to benefit the American interest.
I went through the entire list, just as I was introducing you, of everything that got done since he was inaugurated on Friday.
Yes.
A lot has happened. But you also have all these businesses, everything, when you talk about Ford and General Motors and Apple and Fiat Chrysler and Alibaba and Foxconn, a $7 billion American plant, Kroger, 10,000 jobs announced today.
Started with Carrier.
With Carrier air conditioning. And it's interesting because it seems he has appointments now with the Prime Minister of Great Britain,
Yes.
the Prime Minister of Israel, the Prime Minister of Canada, and the President of Mexico all lined up already.
That's correct.
Is that the top priority right now, getting the economy going?
It's all of it. It's all of the above. It's getting the economy going, but it's getting the economy going in many different fronts. It's repealing and replacing Obamacare, which has been detrimental to the economy, and it's been detrimental to millions of Americans who already lost their insurance, lost their doctors, lost their plans. They were promised otherwise, and they're in a much less favorable position now, Sean, because of Obamacare. It was not affordable. It's not accessible. People, and even those who have the, quote, Affordable Care Act, many of them can't use that health care because their premiums skyrocketed so far out of control that it's useless to them. If you live in Arizona, a 116% increase. If you live in Pennsylvania, a 53% increase. And so Donald Trump, as president, is making good on that promise to repeal and replace Obamacare. And he's gotten a lot of help from his Republican Senate. Paul Ryan is working hard with him, the Speaker, Leader McConnell. Everybody's working toward these solutions. The other thing about the economy is if you can unleash more American manufacturing, if you can renegotiate trade deals that actually benefit the American worker and stop those factories and those workers from bleeding out into Mexico over to China, we've lost 70,000 factories. It's just a remarkable statistic. If you can lower the tax burden on our families, on the middle class, on the employers, the businesses that employ America, and you can encourage small business owners again, if you can invest in energy and unleash energy that's under our feet and off our shores in a way that nobody's ever really done, invest in clean coal, invest in shale and hydraulic fracturing the safe way, you're unleashing economic explosion and growth that is truly remarkable. He's promised to create 25 million jobs over 10 years. He's promised to have a tax reduction. And let me remind everybody that even George W. Bush, who came into office 5 weeks after the actual election through a Supreme Court decision, he came into office, some people felt cheated, there were hurt and raw feelings, but he got his tax package through by June of 2001 of those first couple months. And he did it with the help of Democratic senators, many of whom were up for re-election the following year and knew that their constituents wanted to share in that economic prosperity and tax reduction. I hope the same is true of this Senate so that people all across the land can benefit economically.
You know, you touched on a lot of the promises, which I think propelled Donald Trump into this House that we're in right now. Paul Ryan wants a 20% business tax. We have one of the highest in the industrialized world at 35%. Donald Trump said 15%. Will there be a negotiation on that? And the repatriation of trillions. That's a lot of money multinational corporations have parked overseas that could be used for investment in factories, manufacturing centers. That's a big part of it. Explain where they are, because they just met tonight as well, just as I was getting in here.
Yes, they are meeting as we're talking tonight, and they've been meeting quite a bit, which really tells you about the collaboration, the cohesion, and the negotiation that's happening in the interest of the American people. I will guarantee you one thing, that corporate tax, that business tax will be reduced by President Trump because... Dramatically. And he promised, he'll make good on his promise the way he's made good on promises in these first couple days, first couple hours. And what's important about reducing the burden on employers, Sean, is that those are the individuals who are deciding whether they can attract and retain a workforce here in America or if they're going to have to go elsewhere. Those are the people deciding whether they can afford to pay their workers benefits, pensions, retirement funds, and certainly health care and other benefits, along with a good salary, along with a good wage. And so you've seen American business and the stock market, frankly, already respond so positively to President Donald J. Trump because they know that he's a master negotiator, the most brilliant communicator and connector I've ever met, and that he's taking all those skills to bear here in the White House. You know what's refreshing? Name one other person who ever came through this door as president who wasn't a politician, who didn't come to Washington owing someone something. It's liberating for him to walk in here and do this. And as we speak, he's in a different part of the White House right now, meeting with the bicameral, bipartisan leaders of the House and Senate. And that includes someone like Senator Schumer, who just yesterday was critical of Donald Trump, but yet comes here, I hope, recognizing that President Trump wants to find some common ground ways to work together on behalf of people.
75% rollback in regulations,
Huge.
which is costing corporations billions and millions of dollars. So you add that to the lower corporate tax rate, middle-class tax cut. You mentioned energy independence, Obamacare, more competition, lower rates, I would assume, and the energy issue alone, which is the lifeblood of our economy. It took President Reagan about 2.5 years before we felt the full impact of his policies. What can people expect?
Part of that is because President Reagan, not unlike President Trump, has inherited a bleak economic picture for many Americans. There are many Americans still trapped in poverty, about 16 million women alone, 12.4 million women that don't have health insurance as we speak. And I'm talking about women because I was acutely aware of the, quote, Women's March this last weekend, and I thought of all the things that we can count and quantify, all the items that they could have listed on their list of grievances from the podium about President Obama, who was president for 8 years. President Trump's been here for about 8 hours. And, you know, if this is your list of grievances, then at least help is on the way. At least you've got the greatest fixer and rescuer and brilliant businessman in Donald Trump to help fix it.
What about Madonna's comments?
I think it will take a while to see that impact, only because so many people are so far behind now. Stop looking for work, are on food stamps, the way you like to say, are on poverty, are on teetering, just find everyday life to be unaffordable. That's why Donald Trump got, you know, when the labor union heads were sitting in here today, they would tell him.
And they've never been, this was interesting to me.
3 hands went up. He said, how many of you have been in the Oval Office when he took them into the Oval? And 3 hands went up.
This is the Democratic Party historically.
The carpenters, the plumbers, the steel workers,
and he did
all
say,
the guys I grew up with, right,
guys.
Sean? All the folks we grew up with.
By the way, I spent 10 years of my life as a contractor.
That's right,
so
absolutely. So
full time. Yeah.
And that is the lifeblood of the Donald Trump electorate, too. And they were just so grateful to him for having them in here to share with him and Vice President Pence their ideas on how to work together. You asked me about Madonna? Mm-hmm. She missed a tremendous opportunity. She has a platform and hundreds of millions of dollars. I didn't see her writing a check.
What about her thought process of thinking of blowing up the White House?
Blowing down the office where my 4 children's mother works, sure. And then she said she was misunderstood. It was taken out of context. But I don't think that could be taken out of context. I think people feel very safe and very bold while they're up there surrounded by their friends and their colleagues. But the celebrity thing didn't work for Hillary Clinton out on the stump. She thought people were coming to her rallies. They were coming for a free Jay-Z and Beyonce concert. And even then it failed. We won Pennsylvania despite her and them, and the Obamas going to Philadelphia for her. It didn't work, and it's not going to work now. I thought they just missed an opportunity to really try to help women where women are in need.
Let me ask you this. So far, you're talking about, and this was surprising as I watched some of the media coverage of his inaugural address, and he actually reiterated the very things that he said in the campaign. You mentioned at the beginning of this interview fulfilling promises. And I guess as a conservative and the people that I talk to and the people that write me and call on my radio show, what they want to know is it's real about originalists. It's real about extreme vetting. It's real about the wall. It's real about the tax cuts. It's real about energy independence and trade deals and our military and our VA and education being sent back to the States.
ISIS.
All of this, do you think you could touch? That's a pretty ambitious agenda.
It is, but that's Donald Trump. If anybody can achieve that, it's President Trump. It is real, and it's also happening right now, right before you, steps away from here. This is such a high-energy, high-impact place. And the other 2 things that Donald Trump did today as president was he, in addition to withdrawing from TPP, he instituted the Mexico City policy where we stop sending money to countries that perform abortions and sterilizations. That's great on the heels of the March for Life this coming Friday, where this administration will have representatives there, and that's very unusual for administrations to do that. We know that that will be a very successful march. We know that those women, those pro-life women, were not welcomed in the so-called March for Women because they are on the wrong side of that issue, because they dare to say that human life is precious, and they don't like the fact that our culture is sliding into that. And then he also today had a hiring freeze on non-military executive branch.
I want to get to that when we get back.
Hiring.
He is, real quick, he is serious about a 10% cut in government spending.
That's right.
And a 20% reduction in the labor force in government, short of the military.
Yes.
And coming up, part 2 of my interview with Kellyanne Conway inside the Trump White House, and then later tonight.
Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I am outraged. Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Blowing up the White House. Hollywood snowflakes out in full force at this weekend's various women's marches. Later tonight, Laura Ingraham, she'll weigh in on that and much more as Hannity continues tonight from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Welcome back to Hannity, and here is more of my interview with Kellyanne Conway at the Donald Trump White House. Take a look. I want to talk about the news industry. And I make no bones about it. I am a passionate conservative. I supported Donald Trump for president. There were fake news reports. Go back to the Russia report. Go back to the dossier and supposedly what was caught on film in a Russian hotel, the Ritz-Carlton there. And then, a story went out, the MLK bust was taken out of the Oval Office, which was false. And then there has been irresponsible and reckless reporting. I particularly watch interviews when you're on or Reince is on, and it's pretty hostile. You know, I look at people like Chuck Todd and comments that he makes, how divisive the president's inaugural address was. Do you find that the media is being particularly hostile? And is there a difference between the way they treated President Obama, candidate Hillary Clinton, and President Donald Trump?
It hardly qualifies as breaking news to say that President Obama, especially Sean in his first couple days in office, was treated much differently than is President Trump. We know that, and we're going to deal with that, but it would be nice to see people show respect for the office of the president and its current occupant and give him a chance to do right by the American people. His inaugural speech was uplifting. It was unifying. He said, our brown and black and white soldiers all bleed the Patriots' red blood. He said that if you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. Now, if people want to scoff at that and dismiss it, that's on them. And if they want to call themselves journalists and reporters, they ought to think about what they're really doing. If they snark, if they roll their eyes, if their Twitter feed is filled with a 92% anti-Trump screed, they're not being reporters. They're being opinion columnists. They're being professional political hacks and pundits. And we have a right to call that out. I provided a 17-minute interview yesterday with George Stephanopoulos for his Sunday show. I could hardly hear him. They had a terrible line on ABC, the remote line. I could hardly hear him. I think I was making out what he was saying. Gave a 17-minute interview. ABC News will put out a clip or two about it and come up with a headline. Meet the Press was even worse than that.
Chuck Todd called the inaugural speech insulting.
Right, and I told him it is not his job to give us his opinion. Did you see that played anywhere in the media? It scared them because I'm saying, or they could just say, oh, we have to go after her because she went after somebody in the media. I told him it's not his job. I've known him for 20-some years. It is not his job to give us his opinion. And let me just say, on Meet the Press, the president called me after that performance yesterday, and he was glowing about it. Vice President Pence told me that the president called him and said, did you see Kellyanne? It was amazing, went through each of the points. But that never got covered. 2 words got covered because it suits their purposes. They don't want it. They don't want to quote, to paraphrase Jack Nicholson from A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth sometimes. And the truth is that when you are laughing at me, the highest ranking woman in the West Wing who's not a family member, you are laughing at me on live television and you are ridiculing me, laying out facts that you can count and quantify and that matter, darn it. That millions of women are in poverty. We spent billions of dollars on education the last 8 years for millions of kids to be in failing schools.
But the media, you know, when you made this statement about, well, Sean Spicer was making alternative facts. It was obviously, you were saying, a different perspective.
Information, yeah.
A different perspective.
And he was getting information from agencies that turned out not to be updated.
And then, so I'm at the Freedom Ball, and President Trump and the First Lady were there, and one of the things that he said, he asked the people at the ball, should he keep tweeting? This is a different era. You have
it's the Trump
talk
era.
radio. It's
the Trump effect.
You have Instagram, you have Twitter, you have Facebook. You have the ability to bypass the media.
He has 45 million followers combined on those.
That's a lot more than me. I think I have 5.
Probably 50 million by now.
I only have 5. It's combined. But my question to you is, if it continues to be hostile and fake news reports continue to go out, is there a possibility that things will change dramatically, and maybe those people that colluded with Hillary that we learned in the campaign, maybe they don't deserve the access because they're not living up to what they're supposed to do?
I consider myself someone who has good relations with the press. At least I think so. I think we have to have a free and open press. What I say about it is that this White House and the media are going to share joint custody of this nation for 8 years. And we ought to be able to figure out how to co-parent and mutually coexist. I know there's these new age terms I hear. But in a serious matter, the MLK bus story is so significant in this way, and I talked about it on the Meet the Press, I talked about it on This Week, I may have talked about it on all 3 Sunday shows, I know Ryan's talked about it on your network, and it got 0 coverage. That is a crime, and here's why. We invited the press pool in to the Oval Office. I was there on Saturday, and it was to witness the president signing these executive orders, excuse me, it was Friday, sign these executive orders. We let the pool press in, the spray in, and immediately the print pooler sent out the pool report that the MLK bus had been removed. It is false. I don't say his name publicly because I don't want him to get attacked like I do. Because of what the press is doing now to me, I have Secret Service protection. We have packages delivered to my house with white substances. That is a shame, and yes, I hold him to account for it. This guy puts it out. It gets tweeted and it gets reported 3,000 times. You still can't take it back. He apologized to his colleagues in the press. He has not apologized to the president, and the damage is done because then people look at Donald Trump as the R word. The darn bust was right there. I was standing next to it. It was being hidden by a guard. But why don't you ask us? Why don't you say, where's the bust?
I've said in 2008.
It's presumptive negativity.
Well, I think that we saw a lot of it in the campaign. Kellyanne, congratulations.
Thank you so much,
2 meetings with the president took place in this room today.
Did today.
And it's an honor to see you here.
Visit us
Thank
again
you so
and
much.
again.
Appreciate
God bless you.
Thank you. And coming up next tonight, right here on Hannity.
I'm angry. Yes, I am outraged. Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Madonna boldly declaring that she's thought about blowing up the White House. Now, unfortunately, she wasn't the only Hollywood snowflake protesting Trump's presidency this weekend. Laura Ingraham is here. She'll weigh in on that, and also tonight.
I'm going to come out here and tell you the facts as I know them, and if we make a mistake, I'll do our best to correct it. But I think that it's, as I mentioned the other day, it is a two-way street. There are many mistakes that the media makes all the time.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, he held a briefing today. He vowed to always be truthful, but he also said it's a two-way street when it comes to the media. That and more as we continue from our nation's capital, Hannity on the road. Straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity. So whiny, sore losers, celebrity snowflakes, they were out in full force this weekend to protest the new president. Now, many Hollywood liberal elites joined the Women's March in Washington, D.C. and in other cities. Now, we put together a bit of a montage of the many lowlights from people like Madonna, Ashley Judd, Gloria Steinem. We've got to warn you, what we're about to show you, you may not want your kids to watch because it's so deranged. Take a look.
And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything. Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House. I am a nasty woman. I'm not as nasty as a man who looks like he bathes in Cheeto dust. I am not as nasty as your own daughter being your favorite sex symbol. like your wet dreams infused with your own genes, but yeah, I'm a nasty woman.
I respect that you are our president-elect, and I want to be able to support you. But first, I ask that you support me.
The president is not America.
Madonna now is claiming that what she said about blowing up the White House is being taken out of context, really? And of course, none of those comments that you just saw stopped Hillary Clinton from praising the protesters on Twitter, writing, quote, "Scrolling through images of the Women's March is awe-inspiring. Hope it brought joy to others as it did to me." Here with reaction, editor-in-chief of LifeZette, Fox News contributor, nationally syndicated radio host, our friend Laura Ingraham.
I blend right into the backdrop, by the way.
Yeah.
You'd think I would know at this point not to wear blue on Hannity's set, but what the heck.
How are you?
Good to see
By the way,
you.
it's great to be in your hometown.
Good to see you in the studio.
All right, so when you say that I thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House, Newt Gingrich said she ought to be arrested. Secret Service is investigating.
You know what I say to Madonna? Papa don't preach. I mean, Papa don't preach, express yourself, Vogue, and all of her lame songs. Look, Madonna has been around the bend for a long time, but none of this is convincing. The scoreboard right now is what matters. Trump's in the White House. Today he started enacting his agenda. Executive orders are going to start flying, and these people are going to be like, bing, bing, bing. They're not going to know how to react to all of this. It's like paintball, but really, it's like they're all coming at you at one time.
Ashley Judd, I'm nasty like the bloodstains on my bed sheets?
Well, at that point, I would agree with her. So I would, you know, what's the next one?
No,
but I'm just saying, I don't even understand. I guess the nasty thing references a poem that they all got around.
I guess.
Here's what I'll say. I think the hats were cute. That was a good branding thing. They turned out a lot of people. I'm not going to take this away from them. The folks on the left were really demoralized after the Trump win, to say the least. I mean, think about it. They thought they were going to win this election, Sean. They got completely destroyed in Electoral College. They lost. In a couple of months, they were able to turn out millions of people all across the country, around the world. Now, to what end, I don't know. They did gather a lot of email addresses, that's for sure.
If we had a rally when Barack Obama won in 2008 and he was inaugurated in 2009, and either you said it or I said it or Rush or Mark said it, we'll blow up. I thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House. Now, I'm a commentator, right? Okay. What would happen to me?
You'd lose.
What's going to happen to her?
You'd lose.
Nothing.
Probably a lot of your sponsors. I mean, does Madonna still have people who are willing to listen to her music? I'm not.
I don't think
her last few albums haven't done as well as she wanted, perhaps. But there's always going to be a double standard. But the amazing thing is when news anchors who report on this kind of laugh it off. I saw a few yesterday kind of laugh it off. Like, well, she may get visited by the Secret Service. Ha, ha, ha. But again, if this were coming from any concern, let's say John Voight, let's make it an analogy perfect. Let's say if John Voight said that, or some young actor who happened to be a little bit more conservative, maybe there are a few out there, they would never work again.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
I don't see it.
That would be equivalent of a hate crime.
I think your radio show would be over. Yeah. I'd be out of here, and I would be fired from radio. And that's the double standard. And it's going to be interesting to see if that plays out, because I know I would be arrested, and you would be arrested if you said it about Obama.
Celebrity fury turned no voters out, as far as I can tell. Remember Miley Cyrus was going door to door about 10 miles from here in Virginia.
And she was crying.
Yeah, she was bawling. They're all crying. Scarlett Johansson,
like
God bless
Martha
her.
Raddatz and the rest of the media.
All these people are, the caterwauling never ends. The problem is you have to motivate people to go out to vote. We'll see if that works.
Stay right there. We'll have more with Laura Ingraham right after this break. That's coming up. But first,
I'm going to come out here and tell you the facts as I know them, and if we make a mistake, I'll do our best to correct it. But I think that it's as I mentioned the other day, it is a two-way street. There are many mistakes that the media makes all the time.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer held a briefing today and promised to always be truthful with you, the American people, but said the media gets it wrong a lot of times. By the way, Laura Ingraham will react, and also tonight.
We want to start making our products again. We don't want to bring them in, we want to make them here. And that doesn't mean we don't trade, because we do trade. But we want to make our products here.
President Trump promises to bring jobs back to America. We'll explain that and more as Hannity continues tonight. And welcome back to Hannity. So the left-wing mainstream media was losing it this weekend after White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, he dared to question unofficial estimates about the inauguration crowd size. Now today, ABC's Jonathan Karl had this exchange with Spicer. Take a look.
Is it your intention to always tell the truth from that podium, and will you pledge never to knowingly say something that is not factual?
It is. It's an honor to do this, and yes, I believe that we have to be honest with the American people. I think sometimes we can disagree with the facts. There are certain things that we may not fully understand when we come out, but our intention is never to lie to you, Jonathan. I'm going to come out here and tell you the facts as I know, and if we make a mistake, I'll do our best to correct it. But I think that it's as I mentioned the other day, it is a two-way street. There are many mistakes that the media makes all the time. They misreport something, they don't report something, they get a fact wrong. I don't think that's always to turn around and say, okay, you were intentionally lying.
Oh, I'm sure Jonathan Carley comes to work every day. How can I lie to you guys today? Well, how often are you going to collude with Hillary Clinton, the Democrats, and make up stories like, oh, Donald Trump took out the Martin Luther King bust from the White House? Shouldn't come as a surprise that the Trump administration would be skeptical of the mainstream media's coverage. Here are a few of the lowlights just since the inauguration. Watch this.
Do citizens in dictatorships recognize what's happening right here, right now? Are they looking at the first 2 days of the Trump administration and saying, oh, that's what my leader does?
When he said today, America first, it was not just the racial, I should say racial, the Hitlerian background to it, but it was the message I kept thinking, what does Theresa May think of this? What if you're Putin? You're probably pounding the table saying, that's what I've been saying. Russia first. Yeah. Russia first. This whole bullying message to him.
All right, we continue now with reaction with Laura Ingraham. You know what's amazing about it? Everything with Chris Matthews, dog whistle, racism. Yeah. But, you know, for Jonathan Karl, is your intention, Sean, to come here every day and lie to us?
That was a silly question. I thought Spicer did a great job today. Saturday is the first day they were out. Who knows what was going on? The New York Times had this piece about how it was Trump and Spicer who wanted to smash the media in the mouth on Saturday. Who knows? I mean, the only thing I don't like is leaking inside the White House already. It seems like there's someone's leaking information. Maggie Haberman of the New York Times had a piece about the internal debate in the West Wing about how to do that first press avail on Saturday. And she said, well, it was Spicer and Trump. And there were others saying, no, hold back, hold back. Well, who has the motivation to put that out except the people saying hold back because they decided it wasn't?
That could be problematic, and that would be.
Yeah, a couple of people came on radio today with me, like Michael Steele and Byron York, said that's not a good sign. It should be all united right now. Agreed. Well, people are going to maybe emphasize the wrong things early on. But Spicer was excellent. He came out and made the points. We are working for the American people. We're doing this. He ticked all the things off. You already discussed it. And I thought it was strong, handling what could have been a very difficult day.
Here's the truth and a reality. Donald Trump, I went through it in the beginning of the show. I won't do it now. He's accomplished a lot of things. He's going through seemingly the checklist of promises he made to us during the campaign. Oh, shocker. Chuck Todd was shocked that he actually said those things and reiterated those points during the inaugural speech. Yeah. But this relationship with the press, you know, the whole story about the MLK bus being removed, lie, not true.
They're not used to being called out on it, except by people like us. They're not used to being called out on it in the press room, which I think he said, look, the standard of truthfulness should go with both of us. Right. We both should be held to that standard. That was a good comment by him, and I think that's all that people are asking for. You should be a check, but you should be an honest check.
What about the fact that so many of them in that room, their networks or their newspapers colluded with Hillary?
I think you continue to bring that up, and I think that's why what they do is not necessarily all that important.
You've got a media establishment. You got Republicans arguing about Donald Trump wanting to cut government 10%. I'm like, you're supposed to want limited government and balanced budgets.
Sean, it always comes at a price because they have a lot of donors in their home districts who like the fact that money is spent on certain priorities.
Really? Now we're going to have to fight. So Donald Trump's going to have to fight the Republican establishment, media establishment, and the Democrats.
He did it before, and he won. He can do it again.
All right, Laura Ingraham, optimistic though. Good to see you again. And coming up next tonight from D.C., right here on Hannity.
We want to start making our products again. We don't want to bring them in. We want to make them here. And that doesn't mean we don't trade, because we do trade. But we want to make our products here.
President Trump promising to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States, and he vows to massively cut regulations by 75% or more. Senator Mike Lee will join us next. That and more as we continue from
back to our country. Vice President Pence, good morning, is very much involved with me on that. It's one of my most important subjects. It's what the people wanted. It's one of the reasons I'm sitting here instead of somebody else sitting here.
All right, that was President Trump speaking earlier today during his roundtable with business leaders at the White House today. And President Trump not only promised to cut taxes for the middle class and for corporations, but he also vowed to cut regulation by 75% or more. Joining us now with reaction, Utah Senator Mike Lee. Senator, welcome back. How are you, sir?
Thank you. Doing great, Sean.
Why am I reading today that Trump GOP set to battle on spending cuts? He's talking about a 10% across-the-board cut, and I see that in the House and Senate, while before he was inaugurated, there's a $9.7 trillion increase in the debt ceiling. Aren't Republicans supposed to be the party of limited government and balanced budgets?
Yes, we are, and if we mean it, we will stand behind him, because this is exactly what we are supposed to stand for constitutionally limited government. And we understand that one of the many reasons why Mr. Trump was able to win was because too many Americans all over the country understand that power has been taken away from them and moved to Washington. And then within Washington, it's been handed over to unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats. This has been good for the rich and well-connected, but it's hurt everyone else, especially the poor and middle class.
You did not support Donald Trump, really. You were not, I don't know where you voted in the end, or if you voted for Donald Trump or not, but you were not a big supporter of his. Has your mind changed since he has been elected about him?
Look, I'm optimistic. I want to do everything I can to assist this president in pursuing an agenda of constitutionally limited government. And notwithstanding the fact that we've had our differences, notwithstanding the fact that I expressed concerns along the way, he's our president now. And in light of the fact that he's our president, I want to do what I can do to make sure that he restores the Constitution as a significant restriction on government power, on government expansion.
I interviewed him many times in the course of this election, and I've talked to him since he's been elected. And he has reaffirmed, and I think he did this in his inaugural address, he wants originalists on the court. He wants to extremely vet refugees, build a wall on our southern border. He wants to repeal and replace Obamacare with free market solutions. He wants energy independence, education back to the states, a 15% corporate tax rate, 10% repatriation rate. Is there anything there that you as a conservative disagree with?
No, there's not, and that's why I think there's a lot we can work together on, especially as he's outlined his agenda with regard to regulatory reform. I met with him just a couple of weeks ago, and we had a good discussion about the REINS Act, the need for legislation that would require Congress to weigh in and affirmatively pass economically significant regulations before they take effect. I think this is part of his plan to reduce regulations by 75%. Which would be very, very helpful, especially considering we've gone from $300 billion a year in regulatory compliance costs just 20 years ago to $2 trillion a year today. That's paid for by America's poor and middle class more than anyone else, and we've got to change it.
Are you convinced all of these agenda items that I just mentioned will get through? And how long would it take, do you think, to get all of those things done?
Look, no one can ever be certain that something is going to be done before it's actually done. What I do know is that if we don't try, we'll accomplish none of it. And I intend to work with him on every single one of these issues in a step-by-step process that's designed to put the American people back in charge, to return power to where it belongs, which is with the people, to be exercised primarily.
Let me ask you this,
yes.
A lot of this is going to be based on procedure, and you have a Republican House and Senate, everything the Republicans said they need to get things done. If he appoints an originalist in a week and a half to the U.S. Supreme Court and the Democrats filibuster, do you think the nuclear option precedent set by Harry Reid should be used to advance the nominee and have a straight up or down vote? In other words, the nuclear option?
Yeah, I'll give you the same answer that our majority leader, Mitch McConnell, gave yesterday when asked this question. We're going to make sure that whoever is nominated for this position is confirmed. Without the need to get into the details of how that's going to happen, that's our goal, and we're going to achieve it.
Did Harry Reid set a precedent you think you should follow as a party?
Harry Reid did set a precedent. Now, he purported to hold back part of that precedent when it comes to Supreme Court nominees, and so that creates an arguable difference here. But regardless, we've got tools at our disposal to get whoever is nominated to fill Justice Scalia's place confirmed.
All right, thanks for being with us, Senator. Appreciate it. When we come back, we need your help. A very important question of the day as we continue. Hannity from Washington, D.C. And time for our question of the day. So, what did you think of Donald Trump's moves on day one and the moves he's made so far? Just go to Facebook.com/Sean Hannity, @Sean Hannity on Twitter. Let us know what you think. That's all the time we have left this evening. We will be back right here in D.C. tomorrow night. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.